As I announced, now that we've turned the camera on, this is the City Council Finance Subcommittee meeting of February 13th, 2003. I'm Councilor Hagan, and Councilor Cobb is here. One member is missing, Councilor Rist. Mr. Mason from the Parks Department is here. We're going to start just a couple of housekeeping things, and then we'll get into the things. Minutes from prior meetings. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as I read from you, Justin.
I'll second them. Any
further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Mayor's communication.
Nothing this evening, sir.
Public speak. Is there anything the public wants to speak on that's not on the agenda? If it's on the agenda, during the agenda items, you can speak. If there's something you want to speak about before the agenda item, there's agendas up here. If you're here for, it seems like most of you are here for the athletic fields, that is on the agenda. So, okay, we may switch the order a little because, as I said, Mr. Mason, the director of Parks, has another commitment. So we're going to go to B on the agenda first. The $27,000 to fund and design 3 new athletic fields in Nonotuck Park. Just as a little background, I sit also on the CPA committee, and originally 2 separate proposals were brought to the CPA, one for the baseball Little League fields and one for the soccer fields. And after some discussion, and they were brought by private entities, and after some discussion and some direction, I believe, from the mayor, it was felt that it had to come through the park department to make the request under the new CPA for recreation. So Mr. Mason has kind of embraced the idea, I think, and I'll let him speak for himself. And I think what we're trying to do here, and what they're trying to do with the CPA money, is actually set up a design. Before we could actually go to construction, we have to approve a design for this project. And I believe it's going to be a design for both the Little League and the soccer.
That's correct.
And I'll turn it over to Mr. Mason about maybe some of the positives of why you would, assuming we approve the design. I think we can't limit it while that's what you're looking for. I mean, I think it has to be a wider discussion a little bit about if we do get the design, you know, what would be the benefits to the city of the new fields, because it would be considerable money for you know, both projects. And maybe you could talk about what, again, I know the whole purpose of the design is to come up with cost factors for the whole project, but I know it would probably be in the couple of $100,000 range.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, because this has become a public project, the CPA was requesting hard numbers for this project, and to get hard numbers would put prospective bidders at a competitive disadvantage by posting numbers in a public forum. So we decided, with the scope of the work being changed from years past, the softball, baseball area that was done, they did half of it, I think it was completed 5 years ago. The second half now has a concession stand located and some drainage issues and things that needed to be, so new designs had to be done with that. And then the soccer area, installing a new field and putting irrigation in that. That section was a whole new piece from designs that were antiquated. So we figured the best way to go was get a professional involved, have them do the design work, so we can put a plan together and a bid package together that can go out and get actual hard numbers and move this project forward. As far as these projects helping the park, it'll help in several ways. It'll add to our existing footprint, which brings in traffic. You know, with the weekend vehicle fees, we anticipate increasing those fees with more traffic. We also provide co-ed softball, adult softball. Currently we use the Williston fields for half the games, and this would bring everything in-house, and that would help park program as well, maybe expand it, and they pay a fee to play in those leagues that help offset costs. Some of the things that we've used those costs, monies for, was to hire part-time staff that wouldn't come out of our city budget. We actually pay for a position and a half during the summertime out of our accounts from revenues received, providing services through that. So we think it'll be a win-win. It'll pretty much put us at capacity. There's not going to be much room to do unless it's a major project hereafter, but the existing cleared spots and footprint is there to be able to get these projects done, and we definitely think it's beneficial for the park.
If I might, it also continues to follow through on the long-range plan for both of those sites, and so those sites are intended for these purposes. We haven't been able to fully implement it. This will give us the design to be able to get cost estimates, and I think that's what the CPA committee is looking for. Obviously, in order to get hard numbers, we'd have to go out to bid, and there won't be the kind of time to go out with a bid and ask them to hold it for the time it takes for the CPA committee and City Council to act. But the consultant who's engaged in the design work should be able to give us good estimates to fund.
Yeah, just to be clear, the purpose of the design, are we looking at new fields or just improving existing fields?
New fields.
Okay, because I thought you said something about the soccer fields in tough shape, and I know that certain tournaments require the field to be a certain level of condition, level-wise, grass-wise.
Yeah, adding in the irrigation will help the soccer fields in the long-term growth of it. Right now, we go as the seasons go. If you get a good spring, summer with some wet weather, fields look pretty good. If it's a drought, like this past year we had, yeah,
looks like that.
It gets ugly in a hurry, and it costs a lot of money to get the fields back to where they need to be. With the amount of kids, adults, and community members that use those facilities, the high school as well, it's a lot of traffic on there. Adding the irrigation, right now we have a system where my guys have to go out with big sprinkler systems that they send a hose out, and it's on a timer and it drags back, and then they have to go down there, recheck it, and keep moving it. So as the guys are down there moving sprinklers all day, they're unable to do other things around the park area that need to be done. As you guys know, in the summertime, it's wall to wall every day down there. So to have them, chasing sprinklers around is just not efficient at all.
So it still sounds like what we're doing is making improvements on the soccer field.
Improvements and adding a field.
Going to add another soccer field.
Yeah, there's going to be an added field, improvements on the existing ones.
Are you looking at a different site to add?
It's right there. It's already cleared.
Yeah, I know. I've seen the size of the lot. That's what it's
Yeah.
I think it's this one,
Adjacent to the current.
these are the current fields, I believe, the parking lot.
Yeah.
And it's this
That
undeveloped area, they're going to make another field.
It's clear, but it's not developed.
Okay. And then the new baseball field that you were looking at was going where?
Where the current 3 fields are, where the original plan from 10 years ago that went out had designed to have all 4 done. There was one, the high school varsity girls.
That location is just south.
Pavilion 3.
Just south of the soccer fields, or just north of Pavilion 3?
Yeah.
Or the opposite? Or north of the soccer fields.
This is the lot where you come in, and these 2 fields, I believe, are here.
Yes.
And then this 3rd field, I don't know if they're numbered, would be fenced in also, and then be, I believe, no
That
fence
one's exactly
on this field.
Yep, those would be the 2 additional.
So
And those are cleared land as well.
And I believe dugouts eventually will go in.
Does this impact our 4th of July fireworks?
No. No, that's all deep in the park. It's beyond the pool. And so there's probably some parking in that vicinity for 4th of July, but it doesn't
not
affect.
on that property.
That's not what we're looking at.
That's a hike.
Yeah.
John, or Mayor, or the Finance Director, I just had, this came up during the CPA, and I know that obviously the architect's done a lot of work in the city. Does that have to go out to bid, or is it because it's designed, it's at the discretion
So there's a
of...
designer selection law in Massachusetts that specifies when you have to bid or to go out for RFPs for design services. And the specification is if you're constructing a building, you have to use Chapter 7 of the general laws in order to select a designer. This is considered a public works project, a horizontal construction project. There are no bid requirements for designers, and so traditionally we try to find the best designer for that specific project. Sometimes designers are better at certain things than other things. This is a local designer.
And obviously, all we would be approving here would be the design and
The cost of design.
the cost of design. And I think what, and again, Councilor Cobb, and this is Councilor Ogilevitz that just came in. There would have to be a second appropriation before anything was ever built, and you know, it might be, depending on the total cost, it could be something that, you know, maybe all of it could be done, maybe some of it could be done, you know, and that's, I guess, the whole purpose of the design. I mean, we'd like to do the whole thing. I mean, is there grant money?
Well, yeah. So we were just talking. There's no determination that has been made about what, but there are programs state grant programs that will pay a portion of recreational projects. Whether this project would qualify, whether or not they'd get a grant, I mean, that's all things in the future. All of the work will have to be done according to state wage rates and all of that. You know, so we really got clear interpretation of that. This will be a public construction project. There may be a private component, as there have been private components in all of the ball fields, but that will be over and above and separate from the work that the city will contract for. So that might be something that happened at the end. Dugouts are a pretty common thing that's done by the private sector
would come in
and there was some of that sort of cooperation with the existing fields that are there. So, in fact, the soccer building, I think, was built by the association, and I think the dugouts in Fedsburg was done.
Yeah.
So there's always been a cooperation between the private sector and the public sector on these fields. John kind of described how we manage the maintenance of these, because we don't have the kind of staff that's necessary, and so the leagues help with that, and it puts people in the park that are able to focus on that so that the fields are in as good a shape as they can be. Irrigation is a necessary item. We didn't have the money when we did the soccer field for that, and that was a pretty major initiative, that whole soccer complex, to get it out there. I mean, that there wasn't a road, there wasn't a parking lot, there weren't fields, there were forests, and so that was a pretty big project when it took off. And there wasn't enough money to do all that we wanted to do, but there was enough to get a good solid field and to get them away from the fields that weren't so functional. But I think this will be an opportunity to finish it up.
John, I've noticed a couple times out at the soccer, they have the big reels, the watering reels. I'll call them reels. I don't know if that's the proper term. Now, obviously, people are paid to water them. Is that so we would save at least that cost, or at least minimize it? I'm not saying somebody still got to turn on the sprinkler unless they're on timers. I mean,
well, that's what we were talking about, having to dedicate park employees to deal with moving that sprinkler every time. When you have built-in sprinklers, I mean, it's designed to cover the entire surface. It's on a timer or a switch.
And all our fields are actually irrigated except for the soccer. Yeah, all our ball fields have irrigation.
It really is about the only way to keep turf, consistent.
That you.
I'll actually say this to kind of wrap the discussion up on my end. I'm not averse to all that, actually. I'm okay with the design, because that gives us some hard data to actually work with. I will tell you, when the hard data comes back, that's a higher level of so it's a litmus test for me. I'm still hold to the old tenets of the Community Preservation Act, the second word being preservation. There has to be some level of preservation in there in order to win my vote over. I may be the only one on the City Council that believes that still, because the law has actually changed, and I think using CPA money for this purpose is still quite legal. I just haven't evolved with that change. And so I just want to put that out there, that's my personal feeling, but I have no objection to this particular.
Councilor Ogilevich, you have any comments before?
I think it's a great use of CPA funds.
Okay. Just to wrap it up, I'll give you my opinion. I've been down to the soccer, a few, and a little bit more, not as much the Little League, but I know it gets a tremendous amount of use by the youth, and I think it's important. It's certainly something I'd embrace. So, hearing that, would you care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend to the full City Council approval of the supplemental appropriation of $27,000 to fund the design of 3 new athletic fields in Montauk Park, as presented tonight.
I'll second that. Any further discussion?
None for you.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Councilor Riss, a third member of the committee, and he was unable to attend tonight. But what I will do now is I will, at the next City Council meeting, which is in 1 week, would be the 20th, I'll set a public hearing on this item, because I think we're going to have a few public hearings, and I will set a public hearing on this matter, because the full City Council has to approve it. And so I'll set that at the February 20th meeting, and would be the first meeting, and the first Wednesday in March would be when that hearing would be held. So if people want to come to that, certainly. Did any of you want to say anything? I mean, obviously we approved it. You certainly.
It's good to hear that you're invested in the youth of East Hampton. I think it's important. Every year that we've been a part of the soccer association, we've seen our numbers go up, and we have a lot of kids coming back, and it's a great use of the fields, and I think it shows the dedication, like as you mentioned, to the youth.
Thank you. Anything on the Little League part?
Yeah, I'd echo what Mike says. We're investing in facilities that they can use for a long time.
Okay, thank you.
I can just give you a hard number. Over the last, between fall and spring of this year, 757 kids between youth and high school that use it, and that doesn't even take into account the adult leagues that play. So it's.
And I will say I did get a couple of emails from some other folks that were sent to me before the meeting, and took them into consideration. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
John, if you could just hang on one more second, I'll move to your second. This isn't to do with the ball fields. This is.
Yep.
You can stay through the whole meeting.
The commissioners have plenty to read while I'm still here, so they can read until I get down there and start
Thanks,
that meeting.
John.
We'll see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
We're going to move to a second item so we can have Mr. Mason's input on that before we go, and that's the item D, $17,100 to purchase a commercial mowing machine for the Parks Department. And I'll give the floor to Mr. Mason. Let me just get my, I know you sent some supplementary information on it. Hang on, I'll give it to you if you haven't. Did you get this?
Yeah.
And the back, yes, back is the Quoboda.
Yep.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, we're looking to, as we talk about expanding facilities and where we're going, our current mowers, we have one that's very good, top of the line, can handle the load. We have another John Deere that is more big backyard ability, and we need to start looking at getting machinery that can handle the size of the park. We talk about trying to reduce staff hours on certain projects, things like that. We have the John Deere's a 36-inch deck on it. We were looking to get a 60-inch deck, zero turn. We purchased a zero turn last year for the cemetery. The efficiency, the speed, we were very impressed with that type of machinery and how it handles an area like that. We think moving it into the park area, getting one for the park will be able to cut time involved And as you go down into the park, you'll see other projects that we're doing because we like the ball fields, we like the soccer fields, we like doing those things. But since I've been come aboard, we look at other projects. We're doing adding on to Pavilion 4 with the stone patio, the stone deck, and then the walkway to the pool. We're doing Pavilion 3 currently, so getting our park foreman, George, to the things that a foreman should be doing. We call it beautification of the park, and we meet monthly about where we want to go next and how we can keep enhancing the park, keep improving it. We want to get, maintain that family atmosphere, get families in there to picnic, read a book, do whatever, but to have the facility that maintains that level. We just can't have my guys just cutting grass. They have to be efficient in their work day and to get other projects done.
So this is a machine off of a state bid, and it is heavy-duty commercial, the kind of a machine that can mow hours at a time without fatigue. And from personal experience, I went from a 48-inch tractor sort of mower, for lack of a better term, to a 54-inch zero-turn and cut my mowing time in half at home. I mow about 3.5 acres. So it certainly would cut their mowing time more than in half. And it does a better job, and it'll take the abuse.
Oh, go ahead. Just one quick question.
There's a description, on the far back page. I just don't understand it. Kubota dump from seat catcher.
Yeah, that's
There's
the
a grass catcher behind the operator.
Yeah, that's
a
all it
lever.
is. Yep, I got
Usually
it.
it's a lever, right?
Yes.
And you can back up to wherever you want to dump the grass and stay in the seat. Release it, the hopper opens, the grass falls out, and go back.
Okay.
I don't mean this as a wise question or anything, but I know your facilities down there aren't the greatest, at least the office and stuff. But we do have adequate...
Garages are in good shape.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. We do have adequate areas to store this equipment so it doesn't deteriorate from weathering or anything.
Yeah,
like
we keep our mowers,
the equipment
we keep all that stuff inside. We're actually this spring, the back behind our office, so if you're exiting the park, our office is the trailer, but the garage, and then the next building there, we're looking to clean that out completely and use that use that for storage, because we have some of our Kubotas and some other things that can go in there, and then maintain, because right now we can get it all in there. We park the trucks in there as well, so if we had to, we could leave one of the trucks out to get our mowers in there. But we want to make use of that space and make sure it's secure and tightened, and then we'll move. So we do have adequate space for now, and I submit it every year, but our long-term goal of having decent facilities, garage area and office area is still something that we want to see that come to fruition.
Then you have, maybe it's good, this would be a good time to give you a little primer on that request. It's not in front of you, but as you know, the office was just getting too wet, too much mold, not a good place to be. And so John's renting an office trailer right now, and if you've been down there, you've seen that. The intent is to try to build a better office, sort of a community building. And your ballpark right now is around $500,000. I would say it'll probably bump to $700,000 before they finish putting it all together. And that would be located at a different spot in the park. And the equipment that's at that spot would be relocated to inside the park. So the proposal, and I hate to get ahead of you on this, the proposal is to put the new office immediately on the left as you go down Lowndes Avenue and enter into Daly Field and Nonotuck Park.
So-
And to move the play area, which is
So
there
there's like
now.
a ball field as you come in.
Ball field on the right,
Then
play area on the
high
left.
school, so before across from the
Right
tennis court.
Before you get to the gate, on the left is a play area. That would be the area for the community building office location, and the play area would be relocated and redeveloped in the park, where there is an old play area now.
Yeah, put a newer design, with up to code, up to snuff type of playground area, and have it inside the park.
That'll be a bit more of a major project than that'll be some future capital plan. It won't be this year.
This year, gotcha.
But just to keep it
Just
on
to
the
keep us-
tip of your tongue in case.
Councilor Levis, Jeff, I'm sorry, you look
If you
like
move the play yard into the park, do you get a lot of walk-up people, or do they all, because they don't enter the park?
On the weekends, there's a fee during the summer. During the week, it's free,
Yeah, so-
Monday through Friday. On the weekends, they can still park on top and walk down in. If they didn't want to pay the $3 to go in, or it's $24 for a pass for the entire year.
It's just hard to find free entertainment for the kids.
Yeah.
But there are other playgrounds throughout the city.
Yeah, there's still, and that's the things that we look at, when you look at the price of entertainment, for $24 for a year to have, and it would be, we would make it more attractive with the type of equipment that we'd want, where people wouldn't think about paying to enjoy something that nice, because it definitely is part of our long-term goal is to replace that playground that's inside the.
Big John?
Yeah.
John?
oh, sure, absolutely.
Just to follow up to his question, I was actually going to ask the same question, so he took most of the wind out of my sails. But I was more interested in, I figured you already thought that there would be enough space. But I'm looking at, it's how secure is the equipment, so people go robbing parts off of it.
Yeah, we had all the garages locked, all our buildings locked up. So yeah, everything's
Good to go.
secured. Yeah.
Any members of the public have a comment, or anything else, Justin?
None.
Want to make a motion?
In regards to the commission.
Okay, I'll do it. Okay. Unless you want to keep John here even longer. I'd like to make a motion to recommend it to the full city council approval of the following supplemental appropriation for $17,100 to fund the acquisition of a commercial mowing machine as presented.
I'll second that. Now this motion is seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2-0. Again, I'll set the public hearing on this one also, John, for that same first...
First Wednesday.
Yeah, I'll set it at the next meeting, but the hearing will actually be the first meeting in March. So.
Sounds great. Thank you for your time. I got to head to my next meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. We'll go back to the top of the agenda. $20,000 for Community Preservation Fund for boiler replacement. I don't see anyone here from the library today, and I may have been a little remiss. I had some family issues the last couple of weeks of not specifically inviting them. But I also have a few additional questions. Even though I supported it on the CPA, I had some questions relative to making sure that this would fall under the capital appropriation versus maintenance of the CPA. I mean, we can't do something to maintain it. And our assistant planner was the one that said he checked and felt that it would be a capital project versus a maintenance. And also but I do like the fact that there's some energy savings. It would be going to gas. I think it's not a bad project, and there's also possibly some issues with the smoke and the age of this current thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, you have more knowledge of the project than I do, because as you know.
Right, I know CPA
I'm
is
just a
not-
facilitator in this, in these CPA funds. Replacement of a boiler is a capital initiative, and there's a precedent with CPA funds. We did the same thing at the Historic Society building on Hoyoke Street about 5 years ago. The building is on the register, and so it qualifies as historic. And I believe that these projects are pretty common. These kinds of capital improvement projects on historic buildings are pretty common in the state. I did a search. There's a state website. There's an association, a CPA association, for lack of a better term, and they have a listing of all the capital projects that have been funded by community, by type, you name it. And I did some searches, and I found a lot of similar projects. So it seems to me that in response to your question, is it capital? Yes. And in response to, can you use historic money here? It appears yes.
When you said they said it wasn't on the National or State Register of Historic Buildings. It's on a local inventory of state MACRIS. Do you know what that is? It like
Massachusetts.
Yeah, it's.
So it said it's in their database, therefore it could be used.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's not.
I didn't really
It's
understand.
not restricted like the town hall, but it is listed in this.
It's listed in this state.
historically significant
Right.
register.
Councilor Cobb. Just a little background also for you, Councilor Cobb and Ogilevitz. I think they want to use Wilson. They had like 4 bids, and they ranged. I think this might have been the second bid in.
Yeah, we're going to have to have a conversation with them about, because this is public money.
So it might have to be.
It has to be spent like public money.
Correct. That was my other reason for bringing that up.
But we'll deal with that as they implement the project. Don't make any promises.
So they were looking for $20,000 from CPA, and they were going to come up with a 4 themselves if they went to that bid. So that's all they were going to put in, and they were hoping to get some type of rebates to do that.
How much were they going to put in?
4. But I certainly wouldn't mind putting this off to one more subcommittee meeting and inviting them down if you have more questions, and also Council List might have a question on this. And again, I think the mayor is aligned my fears a little bit on the maintenance versus the capital, but I guess I'd like to know. I know they had 4 bids, and I don't know if I have. And I can also.
I would actually, because some of the questions I have, I want to look them square in the eye and actually ask them. Because the idea here is this is a public-private partnership. We're going to be saving them money in fuel. Are we going to get any of their savings back? Of course not. And we're putting out the lion's share of the cost. And so this isn't much of a partnership to me. And I want to kind of drill into this a little bit.
I'll also provide you, they did have a little more detail of what they're going to do, and it was unfair of me not to get this to you, because they had bids came from like 21.9 to 28.9. That's why they were using 124. And there also was a letter from the health agent, their new health agent, is certainly endorsing the project, because there is it's aging wrapped asbestos. And it would say there is a gas line there. I think they could do it. Again, I don't see that where this is we can't certainly put it off another meeting, because I don't believe we're going to get anything in this heating season.
It'll be summer before.
By the time all this gets approved, it's not going to be. So I'd just soon have them come down and give you your answers, Councilor Cobb. I don't know, Councilor Ogilevitz, if you have any comments or.
I'm just glad to see them going to go gas.
Yes, and I guess there is a gas line there, which will make it, and it should save them a lot. But again, I would like them to kind of detail why maybe this contractor versus the other. Or maybe, as the mayor said, that we've got to tell them that it may not be their choice who they.
We'll walk them through
who they get through the project. So, but definitely, as I said, I'll provide this letter to you.
Nice way to put it. Like it's true.
Justin, I'll provide this letter to you, which is kind of highlights it.
Thank you.
And
I'd
so
like to get a
we'll-
detail of what they're doing.
Right, so we'll move that to the next subcommittee meeting, and I'll get in touch with the library people that were at the CPA and make sure that they're here if they're interested in coming, which I'm sure they are.
Because, we all know they have an endowment, and I'm wondering where that 4K is coming from. So if they ask you, you can pass that along.
Gotcha. Okay, moving on the agenda, we'll put that one over. We did item B. Item C is $5,000 to fund the cost of high-density shelving for the use of the municipal building. This is a project that the city clerk is involved in, and she requested that we move it to the next subcommittee meeting because she wasn't, she wanted to have one more talk with the, because there's been some time, I guess it's been on the capital list for a while, so she just wanted to, before she came in and made her comments about why it's needed, she said she would like one more meeting, so we'll move that without objection to the next subcommittee meeting also. Just gonna make my notes so I remember what happened here. The next item is E, and that's $27,000 for a computer capital expense. Reading through Barry Small's item, I think he attaches a lot of things. I'm not 100% sure what it does, but maybe the mayor can enlighten us.
I can help a little. So you've got a bit of a narrative, I think.
Yes.
And that sort of explains the idea.
The idea, right.
You want to virtualize it. And then what you have is a quote for components of that virtualization, which is where the dollars came from. We're not doing everything. You'll see one section, I think it's probably on the second or third page, as an X in the quote. Those
Right here, this
switches.
So these aren't going to be
We're
done.
not going to include that. I think the whole total there was like 35 or 36,000, something like that. And we don't need to do that portion of it. What we have right now is kind of a conventional sort of server network relationship, and the intent here is to virtualize the network so that first of all, it's using modern architecture because we're having more and more trouble with certain computer programs being able to work on older architecture, and also stability. So those are the pieces behind it. About 3 years ago, we put in a pair of servers that helped us improve the way that the system duplicates the data. So we put in RAID servers, essentially servers that write on multiple drives at the same time, so that if you lose a drive, you've got a drive that has exactly the same information on it. So that helped a lot for our data storage and our backup capacities. This will modernize the rest of the network. And try to answer any specific questions you might have.
No, I know we put some money, weren't we running out of space on the system?
Well, so we put in these redundant drives.
That's what you're talking about.
Right, we put in these redundant drives.
I do remember that.
Increase the capacity. I think that was like 3 or 4 years ago, if I recall.
It might have been my first deal, probably 3 years ago.
And so that piece is still okay.
That's okay.
But there were network. Those didn't deal with the network domain. Those dealt with specific data. I'm not sure if KBS might have been involved in one of those servers. But this is domain control. So this is a little different purpose for the server. And I didn't realize that you hadn't invited Barry. I'm sure he would have been happy to come if you want to continue.
No, I realize that again is.
No, that's fine. I mean, and again, there's no. This isn't critical. If you think that it would be beneficial to ask him to come, that's perfectly acceptable to all of us.
I'd like to actually, I'll give you my opinion. There's looking at. I mean, these items are clearly backed up. I can see where they're backed up. From here down, I can't see where they're backed up. He didn't pull them out of his hat. I know that. It's not here either on the crossed out sheet.
I think it's at the end. Project management, I think, is at the end.
Yeah. Project. So.
Feel free to.
What I really want to do is just send them an email and ask them for further explanation.
Again, we can put this over the next meeting, because we're going to have plenty to deal with it. Councilor Ogilevitz?
Generally, he buries me with information, and I should not like that.
This only gets you another 5 to 7 years?
That's the nature of the business.
That ain't bad.
That's pretty good. I was like, if you, not 5 to 7 months, like everyone else, I'm like, fine, computer at home.
Okay, we'll put this over to the next meeting and have Barry come in. And
I will.
Then you can have your questions, maybe you can email them to Barry, and
I will email Barry my
so that he's,
my questions.
and then we can move it if the mayor says it's not something that. And item F is the purchase of 2 new police vehicles.
And I did have a chance to visit briefly with Chief McMahon today. He's doing much better.
I did see him.
He won't be here tonight.
No, I did talk to him since last meeting. I guess my only question with this, and maybe we can again maybe move this one over too. And I know this is kind of a little bit of a departure from what we went to. We're going from the Crown Vics to these SUVs.
Right, so Crown Vics are gone. They no longer, they stopped making them in 11, I think. And so they had a lot of them, and they finally sold out. And so they use a new chassis, and they make it in 2 versions. They make it in a sedan version, and they make it in something that looks like a slightly smaller Explorer, bigger than their Escape, but smaller than their Explorer series.
Who was just on the news that had?
So Northampton, you just recently read about
2 or 4,
3 that were acquired in Northampton. So the chief has seen these vehicles; they've been in them. The visibility in the sedan is not acceptable. It's a sort of a Taurus shape, and so there's you can't see high sidewalls, tiny windows in the back, very poor visibility. So they're not happy with that chassis and that body. And so the only alternative, unless they go to the Dodge, which they don't like because it's the that modified Charger.
That actually has the same kind of...
It's the same problem as the sedan, is this. The advantage to what they're proposing is that they're buying it for the same price that we paid for the Vics. It's all-wheel drive. It gets better gas mileage because it's got a 6 in it, not an 8. And we'll see about their longevity because they're new. Everybody's new with them. State Police had them first. Chief McMahon indicated that when Sergeant Ross was doing the research, State Police said that this was a much better vehicle than the sedan for the kinds of purposes that a local department would use. And I'll tell you, we can always use all-wheel drive. I mean, I drive one, and it's...
Especially this last week.
Yeah, Crown Vics are not good snowplows.
Well, you learn how to drive it.
And so the request is for less than the total. The totals that you got were with some options that we're not going to acquire. And we're going to reuse the radar. We're probably not going to get a few of the options that are listed on the MHQ list. So the chief said to go in for the 78, which is the same appropriation we requested for the last double cruiser, $39,000 a piece. Last time we appropriated money for one, it was $39,000.
We've been on the 2 cruisers for a while. Is that?
Well, no.
We're behind. Is it 2-1 or 2?
Right. So we normally are on a 2-1-2 rotation. We missed the last Deuce rotation, so it was 2-1-1. And now we're back to 2. We ought to be at 3. He's got 3 cars that he'd like to replace. We just don't have that kind of funding. We'll see if we ever catch up.
And again, I'll ask the question. It seems like this is a priority for you, but again, free cash is getting slim. I mean, is there? If we went to 1, you think we just drop further? I don't know. I know they got a lot of miles on them. Usually, the chief when he comes in has like
exactly.
He's very
the cars that he wants to trade are cars that have been prone to issues, and he's afraid if we keep them for another cycle, that's another 30 or 35,000 miles that we'll end up doing transmission work, and so we'll likely drop several $1,000s into the cars. he's really urgent. You know, we started with 3, and we can't do 3.
Councilor Ogilevich,
You said like that the 6 cylinders?
Yeah.
How does that compare with the get up and go and?
Yeah, they're happy. They're happy with acceleration. State police use them. They like them. We don't do much,
Right.
to be honest, in the way of high-speed chasing. Radios go way faster than cars, and so they'll usually the way that our folks react is they'll usually, since we generally have 3 vehicles roving, they'll usually figure out a way to get another vehicle ahead of whoever they might want to reach out to, so that they sort of follow them into a stop. That's kind of their style. They do it fairly well, and so they're happy with how fast they'll go and they'll put it down.
Sometimes you need some power, and
Yeah.
sometimes you don't.
But the other part of that is there are no 8 cylinders available. They don't make the conventional large sedan, 8-cylinder sedan anymore for this purpose. You can buy 8-cylinder sedans, but they're not made for police work, and so they won't hold up.
This is the state bid.
It's the state bid. MHQ is the state bid.
just one, kind of in line with your, still having a lot of former colleagues in the business. The only thing that any of them said that have driven this is said that in cornering it's not as stable as the Crown Vic, because it's obviously a little more top-heavy. But so again, that would reduce the chase. But again, if anything, we have very narrow streets in East Hampton. I think we got
They do blend in with traffic a lot better than cars. So,
slowing them down won't be, I don't think, the worst thing. So I'll just throw that out for a bit. Again, that's just word of what some people have said. Whether that's true or not. I've never driven one. So.
Yeah, I haven't either. We actually had attempted to put a demo together and weren't successful, and then the chief had his injury and it sort of went by the wayside. They were happy to hear the reports from Northampton. When Northampton got their delivery and started using them. So there's a good response from that department. And as I said, we don't have a lot of choices here. We can't go back to what we had. They don't make it. They've long since not wanted the Dodge option for lots of reasons. And so we are going to have to stay with Ford. And given the 2 vehicles, I didn't ask them to give me pricing on the sedan, but the chief indicated that the pricing was very close. And so he didn't think that there was enough of a financial difference to negate the need for all-wheel drive.
I don't have a problem with this one, Justin, but if you want more time, certainly I'll go along with it.
Yeah, I'm actually going to extend a olive leaf out to the Northampton Police Department, try to get a look at the vehicle, because what I remember is also the way we package our prisoners. And I want to take
Size
a
of
look
the rear seat.
at how we actually do that. I want to get a look at one of these vehicles before I actually...
Okay, so we'll move this over to the next,
I will be ready to vote on this at
The next meeting. which will still get us into the end, by the end of March. Okay,
I was hoping to get you guys to have less hearings, but
I know. Well, we got the continuing business, we have $100,000 to fund the expected shortfall in the police budget. This is one that I believe we approved, but we didn't set a public hearing because we knew there were going to be some other appropriations. So certainly if you want, do you have that one with you, Justin?
Yeah, I do right here.
I think that's the one you want to consolidate with this other stuff you're putting on.
Yeah.
Right?
well, that was my suggestion. But if you're already scheduling,
We already have
to
the-
schedule the 27,000 and the 17, then you might as well put the 100 on it. I mean,
Yes, because we have to
Done with
set
it.
those, and then we'll have the 3 for the next row, unless there's more coming.
there's more coming.
I hear you. So if there's no further discussion on that, we'll put
None.
that one, and I'll set that one for a public hearing, so that'll give us 3 public hearings. We'll do the 100,000,
17.
the 17 for the mowing machine, and the 27 for the Nonotuck Park design. And that'll leave us to bring the other CPA on the boiler back, Barbara's request, which he wanted put over, and again, by then, hopefully you'll have all your answers on the police vehicle, and we can do that. And we'll bring Barry in.
And you'll be getting
Do you want to...
7 public works requests at the next
So it'll be another couple. We'll spread them out. Do you want me to ask somebody from, if the chief can't come, one of the other officers to come, or again, it's up to you, Justin. I mean, I'm good with it. So
I can follow up too. Is if whether it's you, Mike, or whether it's someone from the force, if I have any specific questions, I can detail them in an email, and they can either answer me or bring it, or someone can come here and answer them, which is what I prefer. So you
Yeah, if you get me your questions, I'll get them answered. And
Okay.
if you want someone here, I'll get someone here. That's, that they just need to be asked. That's all.
No, absolutely.
And I didn't.
No, that's fine.
So yeah, we'll make, it's the questions are kind of minor, but it's once I get a look at the vehicle, I'll obviously.
As I said, if you obviously if you can get the questions to mayor, then certainly I know the police would send somebody down, whether it's.
Okay.
I know Sergeant Kelly was sort of in charge there. I don't know if he's still in the. Okay, I think we've completed everything on our agenda.
I will say this: it's not about getting 2 versus getting 1, because I'm a big believer of trying to stay in the cycle. Yeah.
Before we close the meeting, Councilor Ogilevitz, any other comments? Or?
How is the free cash?
This was the last one.
Good. The finance director will probably tell you. I believe there's I don't have it in front of me, but there's like a middle line that was what we've already kind of appropriating, and then the ones that are kind of up for review now are in that last line.
Last one.
Right. So
By
if
the time
everything
the
gets
year
approved,
ends, we'll spend it all.
right, before it's over. We still have stabilization money of close to like 900 something. Is that
It's about
right?
$1 million.
Yeah, it's about $1 million now. Yeah.
Maybe $1 million too.
So how do we normally finish off your free cash? We normally have
We spend it. Well, there's a residual balance, but it's generally not very significant. I think last year we might have left $60,000 or $70,000 on the table.
What do you normally start a year?
You don't start. Free cash is the residual profit from operations, and it can go negative, so it can be a loss. So to use something that's similar.
Starting next year with?
You don't start with. You start with 0. You start with maybe you can.
Yeah, well, as soon as the year ends, free cash becomes unavailable. So even if you had $1 million left in free cash that you didn't spend, it would just be totally unavailable until the fiscal year closed and was approved, and then it's available again. So if you let it roll over, in a sense, if you don't spend every penny that was approved, then it sort of sits there and becomes part of what is certified in the next year.
There's a period of time we can't really access that money.
And that's basically between the time that the year ends and the time that free cash is approved, which is generally 4 to 5 months. Yeah.
And so from July 1 to free cash certification, if there was any left over, you can't. It's like it goes into a lockbox and it can't be used. You can't appropriate it for anything. I can't do anything with it. It doesn't exist. Once you start the year, you can use it, and we have in the past. You can take some of it and apply it to the budget that starts July 1, but that's an appropriation that happens in April or May. So it's not, in private sector, you think your profit was in your pocket, and on July 1, you still got your profit in your pocket, but that's not how the public sector works.
Spend it when you can.
No, well, either spend it or set it aside. So what we have done in most years is we've taken a third of free cash and put it into stabilization. In the last 2 budgets, we haven't had to use. I can't remember 12.
We didn't use any last year, the year before, I think.
Right, so in 12 and 13, we haven't used any stabilization reserves. We fed reserves back in 12 to bring it back up to $1 million. And it was a deliberate decision to do capital, because last year we did very little capital. And the year before, we did like 100, that was in the FY12 budget. No, the FY12 budget, we did 120,000 in capital. That's all we had available. And And so we skipped a cruiser. We didn't buy we didn't buy many things that we needed, and they're kind of hanging on. So that was deliberate from the point of view that we needed free cash to be able to plug a budget gap and to be able to return money to the stabilization reserve, which is like our long-term savings account. And it's tied up because it takes 2/3 of the city council to release it. So it's not easy to spend. We do carry a budget reserve, and so every year when the city council gets the budget, in section 9 of the budget is something called a reserve fund. And so that's a budgeted reserve. That comes from whatever estimated receipts we're going to use. Some of those estimated receipts could be free cash. So right now, I haven't run my own totals. Melissa's got the ones that are kind of visible. There's what, about $300,000 worth of free cash left, or 200 and something thousand.
Well, if we approve everything that's in front of them, there's 271 left in free cash, there's 487 left in retained earnings, and then the reserves are already down to 41, and then about 10,000 in the enterprises.
So you're going to get at the next city council meeting some further spending of both the reserve fund, and then we're going to be asking you for spending for the retained earnings. And that'll further reduce the available free cash and retained earnings. And off the top of my head, we're down to, after that, to about 150,000 in free cash. And that'll sit for a little while until we figure out what the budget's doing. There's a potential hole in the Chapter 32B budget. We need to maybe get through into the month of March and take a look at budgets to see if there are any further shortages.
Right,
because we don't have a lot of money in, I think we started the reserve fund, the budgeted reserve, with 90 grand.
Right, and also like last year when we had to come in for overtime, when we had come in for overtime, that means we need to come in for Medicare tax, because we match 50% of that. So if we're spending more than we budgeted for, then we didn't budget enough in employment taxes. So every time that we ask for payroll increases, the increases in the payroll taxes go up.
1 3/4%, 1.75 or
1.45.
1.45. So that $200,000 that we're going to spend in wages are going to have an impact on our Medicare tax.
And that's why usually at the end of the year, you'll always see those supplementals for
How about this past weekend with the storm?
Well, storms, so right now, by the way, did you guys see what you had to sign?
Yeah, we signed, we put them in the...
So right now, the city council at last meeting, voted the snow emergency. That's deficit spending. So what you'll see in the budget when it's submitted to you in April is you'll see in the income section of the budget a negative or a charge to receipts for whatever we excess spend. That's the way the snow emergency works. So there's two ways to deal with it. We could say, gosh, I don't want to carry it as a snow emergency. Chicopee does this. We're going to throw another $300,000 as an appropriation into snow. So we could take our free cash, instead of buying the capital that we need, we could simply put it into the snow budget and use it to pay the plows, as opposed to buy the cruisers or whatever else we're doing. We don't do that.
All I can say is that when I left East Hampton Sunday morning,
Wasn't it different?
To go to Connecticut, and I've been in Connecticut all week, these guys did one heck of a job. Honest to God, Union Street is in better shape than 91 was.
Yeah, our public works staff does a great job. It's sometimes difficult. We had lots of people complaining, but you're right. If you look at the condition of the streets, when you compare them to elsewhere, they did a great job. Last year we were pretty lucky. We had a light winter with the exception of that nasty October storm. And our deficit spending for snow was in the vicinity of $70,000.
Unheard of.
Generally it's 200 to 300. And that comes right off the top of the next year's budget. And so it's a double-edged sword to do what we do. If we appropriate more, then we have to match that appropriation in the beginning. So if we decide that we're going to budget $300,000, we are forever locked into budgeting $300,000 because you can't declare an emergency if you've appropriated less than you appropriated the year before. So you have to live with that law, and we honestly don't appropriate enough money for snow. I don't know that we ever will, except those odd winters when we don't have much snow. This is going to be probably an expensive year, but it's really going to depend on how much more snow we get. You know, we had a pretty open year, so we declared a snow emergency later in the year than we normally do. And you've seen we haven't had the kind of invoices that we would normally see when we have a long cycle of snow. This storm will be expensive.
The storm, I noticed we rent extra equipment, like because of having to move certain things. And do we have like something with companies up front, like they know we might come, or you just have to go out?
Depends on
how do you do it?
Depends on what we're using. So plows and trucks to haul snow, we bid all that ahead of time. What you're thinking of, I think, is we used.
I think there was like a big
three.
Or something.
We rented 3 Bobcats with snow blowers and operators from a local construction company. That went out as a 30B acquisition, 3 price quotes, and we're not going to spend more than the acquisition will allow us. They were necessary because you couldn't push the snow back, but we had to make the roads wide enough. And so, as you saw, they went down along the curb line and snow blowed into the people's lawns right at the curb where they could. Now, we did a lot of it along Hoyoke Street. We did a lot of long runs like West Street, Glendale, in some of the side streets. We couldn't use them in New City because there isn't any place on the edge of the road to blow the snow. The yards are small. You know, there's the street, there's the sidewalk, there's a fence, there's 5 feet and a house. So we have to pick up those streets conventionally. But these blowers did a great job. Now, we have in the past used, the city owns a loader-mounted snowblower that we use to load trucks when we clean up downtown, that sort of thing. We have in the past used that vehicle to widen roads. But in this instance, because of the level of work needed, there was no way we were going to be able to widen roads, clean up downtown, and do it in any kind of a time frame that made any sense. I suspect that what you'll see is that we're not going to do very much more cleanup until we get a cold snap again. We'll do daytime cleanup. We're not going to do much nighttime because the snow is melting pretty quickly with this February sun. And we get some 3-4 days of February sun, and most of these windrows that are still along the curb will go away. And it's much cheaper to let the sun get rid of it than
I will say this: I have heard nothing but praise about the rental of the snow blowers and widening streets. I had people call me up and say, "I don't know what you did, but it was just remarkable." So it's a technique we use that costs us money, but it was something that the citizens really liked. I got a lot of.
Well, that was necessary. I mean, the thing is, the streets need to be passable in 2 ways, and there was just too much snow here for them to be. And you don't really have a choice. A lot of what highway. I don't want to take anything away from highway, but a lot of the decisions that we make when we decide what to do with the streets are driven in part by the need to be able to respond with our own emergency vehicles.
Yeah.
And so you need to be able to do that. And the other part of it is that folks get irritated when they can't get 2-way passage on a 2-way street. And so it worked out. Joe Pipczynski, the DPW director, continues to do a really good job. Jim Kietza, the highway supervisor, is kind of in charge of the boots on the ground stuff. been doing a good job with it. And PD, although the chief isn't there to ramrod directly, they've been doing a good job with coordinating dispatch. I can't say enough about the response to the storm. I mean, we really did staff up to respond in the fire and dispatch areas, and we filled all the shifts in police. But the governor's declaration of a state of emergency and the, I'll say, request to not drive on the streets, or the order to not drive on the streets, really worked.
Yeah, I saw that too.
People didn't drive, and that made life easier. If you look at our log for this particular storm, it's quiet. Because folks stayed in. They said, geez, this is going to be a pretty nasty storm. Could we do some of what we did better? Sure. But that's what, you learn those types of things.
I will say this, Chet, it took me a couple of years to wrap my head around how we budget snow, because it's not the way you would budget snow removal in your own household. It's a different way of wrapping your head around, around how you do it. I haven't had to be convinced after that, though.
And so, in order to facilitate paying bills, the City Council voted that a majority of their Finance Committee has the authority to approve snow emergency purchasing and expenditures. And so there's a packet every time they come in that's sitting in their box waiting for signature. This one, I think I had already signed it, so
Right,
you guys got to sign it last. If they get it first, then it comes to me. And so it requires, anytime we write a PO or spend any money for snow emergency, it requires City Council authority as well as the mayor's. When it's just a regular budget, it's just the mayor's authority. And so it's a kind of a checks and balance from perspective that, you see what we're buying, you can determine whether or not you think it's, if you think it's not an unrelated or unnecessary purchase and it's a PO, you can challenge it.
Like if the mayor bought a motorcycle during the snowstorm.
The sidecar. But that works out
that's
really well.
what we look for. Or if we see something way out of line or numbers that don't add up, we usually question it. I will say this, that when I first started on finance, the packet we get now from Patty Cotton is actually so well organized, it's very easy to follow and read at this point. When we first started, it was very unorganized compared to where we are today. So we've made improvements over the years. We refine this process.
I appreciate the insight, Mayor. And any other questions before we adjourn? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all.